This is for those of you at a crossroads. Maybe you watched a few motivating videos, maybe you just read dinosaur training for the first time, or maybe you finally made the connection between getting absolutely massive and working with this stuff. Whatever the reason, something's got you fired up, and that something is heavy sandbag lifting. There's only one problem. What do you actually do with a sandbag? Where do you start? On top of that, maybe you're not yet ready to dive straight into the deep end. Maybe you like your current training program and you're not willing to give it up completely. That's just fine. This is actually a great place to be. At least you're aware of heavy sandbag lifting now, which is more than most people can say. Starting slow is probably the best way to go anyway. It will take your body some time to adapt to this new form of exercise, and you'll need to learn and master an entirely new collection of movements before you can start training with weights heavy enough to cause the crazy changes to body composition and strength you're after. What I've learned from talking with hundreds of people now about this very thing is it's likely after a few months training with sandbags, you will be hooked. There's nothing else quite like it, and eventually you'll probably want more. At that point, feel free to check out my other sandbag related videos. In the meantime, here's how to get started. Excluding the press, which lives in a category of its own, separate from most everything else, all of sandbag lifting can be said to exist between 2 points, sandbag on the ground and sandbag on the shoulder. Between those 2 points are 2 main checkpoints, sandbag on the lap and sandbag on the chest. All added together, that makes 4 distinct points of interest. You might say these 4 points make up the bones of sandbag lifting. These bones give structure to every sandbag exercise there is. Before moving on to advanced and highly situational movements, you first need to get comfortable with these basics. You need to know at an intuitive level how to approach each of these 4 positions and how to move from one to the next. Before you can run, you first need to walk. The other aspect of starting new with sandbags is time. If you plan on continuing with your regular training, you most likely won't have much space in your program to work with sandbags. This means you'll need to train in a way that gives you the best return for your time investment. You'll need exercises that get straight to the point and accomplish the goal of familiarizing you with the fundamentals without the need for complicated programming or a high skill requirement. This is where carries come in. My recommendation for anyone new to sandbag lifting is to start with carries. Heavy carries force you to feel the weight and shape of a sandbag like nothing else will. That awkward object becomes a real burden after just a few seconds walking with it, and the body doesn't particularly like being burdened. This means you'll have no choice but to figure out the right way to hold a sandbag, how to reposition it, and what it takes to work with a training tool that doesn't hold your hand. It becomes a matter of survival. Carry it the proper way, or break, or drop it. There's only one realistic way forward. Sandbag carries also happen to cause a lot of positive changes to your body, like improved overall strength and muscle, posture, and stability, to name a few. It won't be long before you see what all the hype is about. Now, all we need to do is combine these things together. 1. Focus on the 4 main sandbag positions, ground, lap, chest, and shoulder, and 2. Use carries to force adaptation quickly. Groundwork set, it's time to choose specific exercises. Here's where the simplicity of this approach really shines through. If you look at each of those 4 positions, again, ground, lap, chest, shoulder, you'll notice only 2 of them actually make sense for carrying a sandbag, at chest height and on the shoulder. You can't carry a sandbag when it's on the ground, and it would be strange to carry a sandbag resting on your lap, though I suppose you could if you wanted to. This means the first 2 points, the ground and the lap, act more as stepping stones on your way to the second 2, and will get all the work they need indirectly when working with the chest height and shoulder positions. Carrying a sandbag held against your chest is known as the bear hug carry, and carrying a sandbag on your shoulder is known as the shoulder carry. That's it. 2 movements to master the basics. Now that we've discussed the why, let's go over the how. How do you actually do these carries, and how do you get into position? Well, bringing a sandbag to your chest should feel pretty intuitive. I'll give you some suggestions and some form guidelines you can follow, but nothing will compare to you just trying it for yourself. You'll quickly realize there's not actually much to it. With a sandbag on the ground, hinge down and wedge your hands underneath each side, palms facing inwards towards each other, only bending your knees as much as is necessary to keep your lower back flat. Take a deep breath and brace your core, and lift the sandbag by pushing the ground away with your feet and raising raising your chest up. Finish the movement by placing the sandbag on your thighs. This position is a place of rest. You should be able to hang out here all day if you want to. Moving on to the next step, wrap your arms around the outsides of the sandbag. Again, palms facing towards each other, arms in a neutral position. Squeeze the sandbag hard and stand up. You're now officially 3/4 of the way there and ready for your first exercise, the bear hug carry. To perform the movement, all you have to do is hold the sandbag in place, trying your best to maintain a solid brace in your core, and start walking, and walk for as long as you can. Every step will be a fight, but keep going, and next time, go for longer. Every time you do the bear hug carry, start with the sandbag on the ground and follow every step outlined before. Ground, lap, chest. In this way, you'll begin to learn the inner workings of each position. Here's a tip to help you out with breathing during a bear hug carry, as that's usually the most difficult part. When the sandbag is on your lap, take in as much air as you can and hold on to it as you stand up. There's a natural tendency to release some of that air when you reach a fully upright standing position, but for this particular exercise, you'll be better off if you fight that instinct and hold on to the air. Once you're standing upright, imagine your entire torso has been cast from solid steel and is unyielding. Imagine that no amount of pressure from the sandbag could cause your torso to budge even a fraction of an inch. With this in mind, as you walk, take quick breaths, imagining each one traveling all the way down to the pit of your stomach, while at the same time keeping hold of that solid brace in your midsection. This most likely won't be comfortable, but given time, you will learn to gain control over the sandbag, rather than allowing it to control you. That leaves the shoulder carry. There's an entire sport centered around lifting heavy sandbags to the shoulder, but when you're first starting out, you don't need to worry about any special techniques or advanced variations. All you need to do is lift the sandbag up to chest height like you have been already, then toss it up in a straight line onto your shoulder. With a sandbag on your chest, take a deep breath and brace, use your legs to generate momentum and power, and throw that thing up onto your shoulder. This will take some practice, but that's what this training block is all about. Practicing the basics and mastering them, setting yourself up for future success. Once the sandbag is on your shoulder, hold on to it with both hands and start walking. Try your best to maintain an upright torso angle, resist the urge to lean too far to one side, and keep your core braced at all times. Make sure to do this with the sandbag on each shoulder so you stay balanced, and to make sure you develop the skill of shouldering a sandbag on both sides. How the rest of your program is set up will determine exactly when and how often you do your sandbag carries, but here are a few guidelines. If you can, try to work with sandbags 2 to 3 times a week, aiming for a weekly total of 6 sets of max distance bear hug carries and 3 sets of max distance shoulder carries per shoulder, for a total of 6 shoulder carries and 12 weekly sets with a sandbag. 30 to 60 seconds is typically a good range for each carry, but the time isn't too important. Just go for as long as you can. The easiest way to do this is at the end of your lower body training sessions. If you train legs twice a week, for example, just add 3 sets of bear hug carries and 1 to 2 sets of shoulder carries per side at the end of your lower body workouts and call it a day. You may need to lower the volume a bit with your other exercises to make room for these carries. Even something as simple as doing 2 sets of squats rather than 3 should be more than enough to make up for the extra sandbag work at this point. Later on, when you become stronger with sandbags, you will need to dial things in to make sure you're not overdoing the volume, but because you're just starting out and your sandbag probably won't be too heavy, a few sets of carries isn't likely to use up many of your recovery resources, and pushing beyond what you're able to recover from shouldn't be an issue. This is a great way to build some confidence with sandbags without taking much away from your other training. You might not even need to pay the sandbag work much attention for the first couple weeks. Just work with those 2 exercises and give them whatever bit of effort you have remaining after your normal workout, and eventually, possibly without even realizing it, you'll reach a point where lifting a sandbag is second nature, just like it is when doing a deadlift or a pull-up. You can use these guidelines for any training program, by the way. Adding sandbag work at the end of a day where you've trained your legs makes things easier because you'll already be warmed up and ready to go, but any day can work. Just aim for 12 total sets every week, 6 sets of bear hug carries, and 3 sets of shoulder carries per side. Last but not least, how heavy should your first sandbag be? A lot of this will come down to prior lifting experience, but I can give some general guidelines. First, before even thinking about lifting a sandbag, you must have a solid understanding of the Valsalva maneuver. It is absolutely essential for any type of heavy lifting, more than ever when lifting sandbags, as they often force you into vulnerable positions. Textbooks define the Valsalva maneuver as expiring against a closed windpipe. But said plainly, you'll want to breathe as deeply as you can, imagining that air filling up your entire midsection down to your hips, all the way around your stomach in 360 degrees. Think abs, obliques, and low back. Once you've taken in as much air as is physically possible, take in some more. Then brace your stomach hard as you can, as if preparing for a punch to the gut from Eddie Hall or something, and get to work. You must do this before every step of every exercise with a sandbag, always. If you're having trouble making that connection with your abs, and it feels like you're only able to breathe into your chest, you can practice by laying on the ground and placing a weight plate on your stomach. 5 pounds is enough to start with, though I remember seeing old school powerlifters doing this with 45s. From that position, try to breathe into your stomach so the weight plate rises. Note, the plate should rise naturally as you breathe in, not as a result of you actively pushing out your stomach. Once you've taken in as much air as you can, brace your core and keep it braced for around a minute. You will need to continue breathing during this time, of course, but your goal should be to keep the weight plate from lowering down as you do. Breathing doesn't mean letting go of your brace. Use the technique I described earlier for the bear hug carry, imagining your torso made of steel. This can be a great way to improve your breathing with that exercise. Once you feel confident with the Valsalva maneuver, it's time to choose a sandbag. Again, these are just general guidelines, but here we go. If you've never trained before at all in any way, not even with calisthenics, doing basic push-ups or pull-ups, and you don't work a physical job, start with a 50-pound sandbag. If you don't lift heavy weights, but you've done some calisthenics or light kettlebell training or something similar, start with a 75-pound sandbag. If you lift barbells and can deadlift between 225 and 405, 2 and 4 plates, start with a 100-pound sandbag. And if you can already deadlift 405 or more, start with a 150-pound sandbag. You may outgrow these sandbags after a month or two, but starting light and mastering the basics now will pay off in the long run. Good luck. Before ending the video, I just wanted to give you a quick update. 2 months ago, I announced I had written a book about sandbags and that it was with a publishing company being changed from a Word document into an actual book. I had hoped for a sooner release, but it turns out it is going to take a bit longer than I anticipated if I want to do everything right. There are certain steps I should take before release, like getting physical copies myself and checking them over to make sure everything is flawless, for example. Most everything is ready to go, but it will be about another month before release. Sorry it's taken a while. I'd hate nothing more than making you wait, but as a thank you for being so patient and encouraging during this process, the book will be on a major discount when it's released, and there will also be an in-depth video I'll release here on YouTube to go along with it, detailing one of the basic programs inside the book. This video here today is meant to be a bridge between your regular training and diving straight into the upcoming program. This bridge isn't necessary. You can go straight into that program if you'd like, but if you're on the fence about sandbag lifting, this is a good way to get started. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions about getting started with sandbags, please ask below and I'll do my best to answer them, and I'll see you in the next one.